Have you noticed how increasingly rare it has become to encounter truly purposeful people in our society? Those individuals who move through life with an unshakable sense of meaning, who wake each morning with clear direction, who navigate hardship with resilience because they're anchored to something beyond themselves. They're vanishing before our eyes, replaced by the chronically distracted, the perpetually anxious, and the existentially adrift. This disappearance isn't happening by accident. It's the predictable result of a society that Viktor Frankl, decades ago, warned was creating the perfect conditions for an epidemic of meaninglessness. We live in the most materially comfortable era humans have ever known. Our basic needs for food, shelter, and physical safety are met with unprecedented reliability. We have technologies our ancestors would have considered miraculous, entertainment options beyond imagination, and more opportunities for pleasure and distraction than any previous generation. Yet alongside this material abundance, we're experiencing a poverty of purpose so severe that it's reshaping our collective psychology. Depression rates climb steadily year after year. Anxiety disorders affect hundreds of millions worldwide. Deaths of despair through suicide and substance abuse reach record levels, all while we scroll through endless social media feeds, binge-watch entire television series in single sittings, and constantly seek the next consumer purchase that promises momentary happiness. This paradox wouldn't have surprised Viktor Frankl. Born in Vienna in 1905, Frankl wasn't just an ordinary psychiatrist theorizing about human nature from the comfort of a clinical practice. His insights were forged in the darkest laboratory imaginable, the Nazi concentration camps where he spent 3 years of his life, including time in Auschwitz. He lost his pregnant wife, his parents, and nearly everything that constituted his former identity. Yet from this unimaginable suffering emerged one of the most profound psychological frameworks of the 20th century, one that explains precisely why purposeful people are disappearing from our modern world. Before being imprisoned, Frankl had begun developing logotherapy, a therapeutic approach focused on helping people discover meaning in their lives. But it was in the camps that his theories were tested against the harshest reality. There, he observed something remarkable. Among his fellow prisoners, those who maintained some sense of meaning, some purpose beyond their immediate suffering, were significantly more likely to survive. Physical strength, youth, and health offered advantages, certainly. But Frankl witnessed physically robust individuals who, upon losing their sense of purpose, rapidly deteriorated and died. Meanwhile, others who appeared more physically vulnerable but maintained a reason to live, some future goal or responsibility, displayed extraordinary resilience. From these observations came Frankl's central insight. Humans are not primarily driven by pleasure or power, as Freud or Adler suggested, but by meaning. We need a why to live. Without it, we struggle even in comfortable circumstances. With it, we can endure almost anything. In his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl quotes Nietzsche, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." So why, in our age of unprecedented comfort and opportunity, are purposeful people becoming an endangered species? Frankl identified several factors that create what he called an existential vacuum, a state of emptiness and meaninglessness that now pervades much of modern society. Understanding these factors illuminates exactly why purposeful individuals have become increasingly rare. The first factor is the collapse of traditional structures that once provided ready-made meaning. Throughout most of human history, people inherited clear roles, values, and purposes from their cultures, religions, and traditions. You knew who you were supposed to be and what you were supposed to do because your society told you. While this limited individual freedom in many ways, it also provided a framework of meaning that prevented existential drift. As these traditional structures weakened with modernization, individuals gained freedom but lost automatic sources of meaning. Suddenly, the question, "What should I do with my life?" became each person's burden to answer individually. This might not have been problematic if we had developed new shared sources of meaning to replace the old ones. Instead, we've created a culture that actively undermines the development of authentic purpose. We've constructed a society where distraction is always available, where difficult emotions can be immediately numbed, where consumption is celebrated above contribution, and where the shallow and immediate consistently displaces the deep and enduring. Consider how our technology is designed not to help us live more meaningfully, but to capture and hold our attention for as long as possible, regardless of the impact on our well-being. Social media platforms, Streaming services, video games, and countless apps are engineered with sophisticated psychological techniques to keep us engaged. They deliver constant novelty, variable rewards, and frictionless experiences that our brains find irresistible. Hours disappear into screens, days into weeks, weeks into months. Meanwhile, the deeper work of developing purpose, which requires sustained attention, tolerance of discomfort, and engagement with difficult questions, is constantly deferred. Or consider how our economic system often rewards work that produces profit, but not necessarily meaning. Many find themselves in what anthropologist David Graeber called bullshit jobs, positions that even the people holding them can't justify as making a valuable contribution to the world. When your labor feels pointless, when you can't connect your daily efforts to any greater purpose, a fundamental source of meaning is cut off. Yet financial necessity keeps millions trapped in such roles, their creative energy and potential for meaningful contribution squandered. Even our approach to education has shifted away from the development of purpose. Rather than helping young people discover what genuinely matters to them and how they might contribute to something larger than themselves, we increasingly focus on credential acquisition, test, performance, and career preparation for jobs that may not even exist by the time students graduate. We teach the how without the why, developing capable but purposeless individuals. Then there's our collective obsession with happiness, an emotion that, ironically, becomes more elusive the more directly we pursue it. Frankl understood that happiness cannot be successfully pursued. It must ensue as the side effect of living meaningfully. Yet our culture bombards us with the message that happiness is the ultimate goal, achievable through the right purchases, experiences, or life hacks. This misdirection leads millions to chase positive emotions while neglecting the development of purpose that would make those emotions more naturally accessible. All these factors combine to create what Frankl described as Sunday neurosis, the empty feeling that overcomes many people when the busy weekends and they suddenly face unstructured time. Without external demands structuring their lives, they confront the void of purpose within. Today, this neurosis is no longer confined to Sundays. It appears in retirement, in the gaps between relationships, in the quiet moments when our devices are temporarily set aside. The purposeful person knows what to do with such time. The purposeless person feels only anxiety and emptiness. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Michael. At 45, Michael had achieved everything society told him constituted success. He had the executive title, the comfortable salary, the impressive home, and all the trappings of upper middle-class life. He also had persistent insomnia, high blood pressure, strained family relationships, and a growing sense that none of it mattered. When we spoke about his life, he confessed, "I keep climbing the ladder, but I'm increasingly convinced it's leaning against the wrong wall. I just don't know how to get off without letting everyone down." Michael's situation illustrates another aspect of our purpose crisis. Even when we sense the emptiness of our current path, social pressure, financial obligations, and fear of the unknown keep us trapped. We continue investing our life energy in directions that don't truly align with our deeper values or potential contributions. We become what Thoreau described as leading lives of quiet desperation. Another person I'll call Sarah represents a different manifestation of the same problem. Unlike Michael, Sarah hadn't achieved conventional success. At 28, she'd moved through a series of short-term jobs, relationships, and living situations, never committing to any direction long enough to develop depth or purpose. "I'm waiting to find my passion," she explained, "that thing that will just click and make everything fall into place." Meanwhile, she spent hours each day on social media, comparing her life unfavorably to others and feeling increasingly anxious about her lack of direction. Sarah's situation reflects another obstacle to purpose in modern life, the myth that meaning arrives through epiphany rather than engagement. We expect purpose to announce itself fully formed, a lightning strike of clarity about our life's direction. Frankl would argue that this gets the process backward. Purpose doesn't come from waiting and thinking. It emerges from acting and committing, from responding to the specific demands of our particular life situation. It develops through the responsibilities we accept, the values we enact, and the suffering we transform through our attitude toward it. Both Michael and Sarah represent different aspects of the purposeless existence that's becoming endemic in our society, and both illustrate Frankl's insight that the existential vacuum, this sense of emptiness and meaninglessness, manifests in distinct ways, sometimes as conformity, doing what everyone else does, sometimes as totalitarianism, doing what others tell you to do, and sometimes as addiction, doing whatever provides temporary relief from the emptiness. Look around, and you'll see these manifestations everywhere. Conformity appears in lives constructed entirely around social comparison and conventional markers of status. Totalitarianism emerges in the blind adherence to ideologies that promise to provide meaning through absolute certainty and group identity. And addiction shows up not just in substance abuse, but in process addictions to work, exercise, social media, pornography, shopping, anything that temporarily distracts from the void of purpose. So what happened to the purposeful people? They didn't suddenly disappear. We systematically created conditions where they struggled to develop. We built a society that makes distraction effortless and purpose difficult, that rewards external achievement over internal coherence, that celebrates consumption over contribution, and that treats meaning as a luxury rather than a necessity. The consequences extend far beyond individual unhappiness. A society where purposeful people are rare becomes vulnerable to manipulation, susceptible to division, and incapable of addressing complex collective challenges. People without personal meaning become easy targets for movements offering synthetic purpose through hatred, tribalism, or oversimplified worldviews. They become less resilient in the face of inevitable suffering and less capable of making sacrifices for future generations. The disappearance of purposeful individuals undermines the very foundation of a healthy society. Yet despite these powerful headwinds, purposeful people still exist. They may be less visible because our media landscape rarely celebrates them, but they're among us, living with a sense of meaning that anchors them amid the cultural currents of meaninglessness. What distinguishes them? What allows some to develop and maintain purpose while so many others drift? Frankl's work suggests several characteristics that purposeful individuals share, regardless of their specific life circumstances or the particular form their meaning takes. First, they practice responsibility. Rather than seeing themselves as passive victims of circumstance, they recognize their freedom to choose their response to whatever life presents. This responsiveness, this responsibility, is fundamental to living with purpose. It means asking not what you want from life, but what life demands from you in your particular situation. Second, purposeful people engage in self-transcendence. They direct their attention and energy beyond themselves toward people, causes, or work that they value. Frankl observed that happiness and fulfillment come not from self-focus, but from self-forgetfulness in service to something greater. This doesn't necessarily mean grand, world-changing missions. It might be as simple as the parent who finds meaning in raising children, the teacher devoted to their students' development, or the craftsperson committed to excellence in their work. Third, purposeful individuals maintain awareness of their mortality without being paralyzed by it. They recognize that life's finitude is precisely what makes our choices significant. In a limitless life, nothing would need to happen today rather than tomorrow or 1,000 years from now. Our mortality creates urgency and meaning by making time precious. As Frankl put it, live as if you were living for the second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as you are about to act now. Fourth, those who live with purpose have developed the capacity to find meaning even in suffering. This doesn't mean they seek suffering or consider it good in itself. Rather, they transform unavoidable suffering through the attitude they take toward it. They ask not only, why is this happening to me, but also, what does this ask of me? They find purpose not despite their wounds, but often because of how those wounds have shaped their particular contribution to the world. So how do we reverse the disappearance of purposeful people from our society? How do we cultivate meaning in our own lives and help others do the same? Frankl's work points towards several pathways. First, we must recognize that purpose isn't something we find through endless introspection or waiting for passion to strike. Purpose develops through commitment and engagement with the concrete demands of our lives. Start by asking not, what would make me happy, but what is required of me? What task is mine to do? Look at the unique constellation of your relationships, abilities, and circumstances. What responsibilities are uniquely yours to fulfill? Begin there, with what's directly in front of you, rather than searching for some abstract, perfect purpose. Second, create space for the existential questions that our busy, distracted culture helps us avoid. Questions like, what matters most to me? What kind of person do I want to become? What have my particular sufferings prepared me to understand? How might I use my unique combination of gifts and wounds to serve others? Such questions aren't answered once and for all, but revisited throughout life as our circumstances and capacities change. Third, develop what Frankl called tragic optimism, the capacity to say yes to life despite its tragic aspects of pain, guilt, and death. This isn't naive positivity that denies suffering, but a deeper affirmation that chooses to find meaning even within life's most difficult dimensions. It's the recognition that our capacity to make meaning is never completely constrained by external circumstances, that an inner freedom remains even in the most outwardly restricted situations. Fourth, cultivate awareness of the three primary pathways through which humans discover meaning: creative work, meaningful experiences, and the attitude we take toward suffering. Examine your life through these lenses. Are you contributing something of value through your work or other creative endeavors? Are you fully present for experiences of truth, beauty, and love? Are you transforming unavoidable suffering through the stance you take toward it? As we move forward individually in the pursuit of meaning, we must also work collectively to create a culture more conducive to purpose. This means designing technologies that serve human flourishing rather than exploit psychological vulnerabilities. It means building economic systems that value meaningful contribution alongside profit. It means developing educational approaches that help young people discover not just what they're good at, but what they care about and how they might serve. And it means creating communities where deeper questions about meaning and purpose can be explored together rather than navigated in isolation. The disappearance of purposeful people from our society isn't inevitable. It's the result of specific cultural conditions that we have the power to change. Viktor Frankl's insights, forged in humanity's darkest hour, offer a path toward reclaiming meaning in our age of comfortable meaninglessness. His message remains as urgent today as when he first articulated it. Humans need more than pleasure, power, or even happiness. We need meaning. And when we find it, or rather, when we create it through our responses to life's demands, we become capable of flourishing even amid difficulty and of contributing to a world desperately in need of purposeful individuals. Perhaps the existential vacuum that Frankl identified as the signature pathology of our time is actually an invitation. Perhaps the very emptiness so many experience is calling us toward a more authentic way of being human, toward lives constructed around meaning rather than distraction, contribution rather than consumption, love rather than self-absorption. Perhaps the disappearance of purposeful people is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where we reclaim our essentially human capacity to create meaning, even in the most unlikely circumstances. If what I've shared today resonates with something deep within you, if you've recognized this crisis of meaning we've been discussing, know that you're not alone on this journey. Many of us have spent years navigating a culture that offers endless distractions, but few genuine sources of purpose. Viktor Frankl's wisdom isn't just a distant theory, it's a practical path to transform your emptiness into meaning, your drifting into direction. This channel exists as a space where we explore these fundamental questions of human existence together, where we discover how to live authentically meaningful lives even within a society that often undermines purpose. If you wish to continue this journey, if you're ready to become one of those increasingly rare purposeful people, subscribe to the channel now. Each week we share new perspectives, practical tools, and profound reflections inspired not only by Frankl, but by all wisdom traditions that help us develop lives of meaning. I don't promise easy answers or instant transformation, but rather an honest and meaningful path, supported by ideas that have survived the worst conditions humanity has ever faced. Click the subscribe button, activate the notification bell, and let's walk together toward becoming the purposeful individuals our world so desperately needs. You don't need to navigate this existential terrain alone. We're here, week after week, exploring together what truly matters.